There are hundreds of unsolved homicides and missing person cases here in Monroe County. Throughout the last 6 months, I have been investigating some of these cases. I have spoken with officers and family members of some of these victims to try and uncover the real stories behind those who are no longer here to share them. Today, in this two-part series, you will learn the real story behind the disappearance of 16-year-old Dominique Holly Grisham. I'm your host, Madison Scott, and these are the unsolved cases of Monroe County. Hello and welcome to the Unsolved Cases of Monroe County. I'm Madison Scott. The story you will hear today is about the disappearance of Dominique Holly Grisham, a 16-year-old boy who went missing from his Rochester home back in 2009. But this is also a story of a mother who has spent the past 13 years searching for answers and fighting to get her sons out in the media. Today I am joined by his mom, Moselle Jones Grisham. She actually traveled all the way here from North Carolina to speak with me today. So thank you so much for being here. It's finally great to meet you in person. So let's start off by getting to know Dom. What was he like growing up?
Energetic, fun. With he's my second oldest out of 6 boys. So, with all the boys in the house, they were very active into sports and school. So it was a playground in the household. So
What was his favorite sport growing up?
hockey. He played basketball, he played soccer, and he did indoor and outdoor hockey. So I know he loved hockey.
Were his brothers involved in sports too?
Yes.
Did they do that a lot together?
Out of my 6 boys, 5 boys played sports. My one son, Marcus, didn't do sports, but they all love sports, especially football.
When you think of Dominique, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? What was your favorite thing about him?
Funny, character, comedian, very outspoken.
So take me back to February 12, 2009, the day Dom disappeared. Was it just a normal day for your family? Was anything seem off with Dom that day when you look back now?
No, he had just turned 16 in January. On the 15th of January, he played a hockey tournament. They won, so February we decided, he wanted to have a little get-together, a little party. So I was out, Dominique was home with my best friend Jeremy and my youngest son Antonio. Typical boys, they were arguing over remote control. So Jeremy, when I got back home, Dominique wasn't there. So Jeremy was just like, he was making CDs for the party, cleaned up, someone called him on his cell phone, he walked out the door, and that was the last time.
Now, was that uncommon for Dominique to walk out, get a phone call and walk out the door? Like,
No.
did anything seem
No, he
wrong
was a
about it?
Typical 16-year-old boy on the phone, Probably was talking to a girl, because at the time he was dating Desiree. So I met her actually that day on the computer. They were talking live on the computer. So
Desiree was his girlfriend. The first day you met him was the day of the party.
Yes, that's when I met her.
The day he disappeared. Did she say that she was going to go to the party?
I assumed she was, but with boys,
Yeah.
one week they could be with this girl, the next week with another. So
Yeah. What was Dom's demeanor like that day? Did he seem upset? Or?
Not that I can recall. No, just was excited to do the party, because back then you made the CDs, so he was excited to be on the computer to make his CDs and get everything prepared.
I know you said in our first interview that day he actually won a hockey game, and he was the MVP of that game.
Yes.
So he was definitely excited, happy mood that day.
Just turned 16, thought he was grown, so typical boy.
And so when he got the phone call and first left, nothing seemed weird. To Jeremy and Antonio, they didn't think anything of it, right?
Not that I know of. No.
And so what time was it that you got back and realized that Dominique wasn't there?
I don't know the exact time, but it was more, afternoon, evening, so I don't know the exact time.
So when did you first contact the police and realize that maybe he wasn't coming back home?
The day was going, the night was going. I'm like, where's Dominique? Where's Dominique? So then I called the police. Then they told me I had to wait 24 hours before I can report him missing, or maybe he just stepped out. So hours went by, and my uncle was a sheriff, so he asked the officer to come out and take a report. So the officer came out. They did a report, and they told me, we have to wait 24 hours before they can.
What time was that? That was still that same night, right?
It was, same night, like a little after 12, like 1 or 2 in the morning.
Okay.
That they finally decided to come out. And he took the report, and they said, well, maybe he'll come, he may just return. Typical reports like this, we don't consider him missing. He may just run away or just stepped out. Give it time, he'll come back. That was odd, but we waited and waited and waited, and Dominic never returned.
So how long was it? I know they said that they had to wait 24 hours before they filled a missing persons report. But when they did do that, did they file it as a missing persons report? Or?
No. 3 years later, February in 2012, I joined between the 9th and the 09 and 12, I joined a group called Missing the Missing, which was founded by Nicole Coleman of Families with Missing Loved Ones. And they initially did a flyer for endangered runaway. There was no reason to think that Dominique ran away, so I was asked for them to change that flyer because he didn't run away. He's missing.
So between 2009 and 2012, he was labeled as a endangered runaway and not a missing person. Did the police tell you why they thought that he was a runaway, even after you told them multiple times that he wasn't?
No, I barely even had contact with the police. Calling them, having to tell my story over and over, and as a mother, and if I explained it to you the first time and you know that he's missing, every time I call, I should be like, this is Moselle Grisham, and then you should have something to say, okay, nothing on the case, nothing new. But to say, who's your son again? What's the case? I'm new here. Can you run it down for me? And they have to keep telling it over and over was very, very frustrating.
So between 2009 and 2012, were the police doing anything to look for him, or were they just expecting him to be a runaway and coming home?
Expecting him to be a runaway and coming home. They did nothing. Nothing. After I joined Missing the Missing, we would do the searches, and I would do the flyers out because on his birthday or his anniversary, I tried to keep his face fresh in the media. Because other than Missing the Missing or me doing anything, it was no coverage, no nothing. Nothing's done.
So, back to 2009 when he first went missing, and after the police initially came to your house, the next day and the days following that, what were they saying to you? Did they give you any reason behind why they would label him as a runaway?
No, ma'am.
They did not?
They did nothing. Nothing. No calls, no nothing. His birthday would come around. I would have an event, just in honor of his name for his birthday and his anniversary. But nothing. I would call because then there was a camera on the street. So I'm like, well, could we look at the camera? Because I lived on a one-way street. Maybe I could have noticed the car he got in, could have noticed which way he walked. But, to hear that the camera was there for another reason, and 3 years later, the same people standing there. So that was frustrating to me. By 2012, it was hard to trace his cell phone. So that was frustrating to me. So it was just a slap in the face that, if I didn't say anything or do anything, the police department didn't either.
So was it in 2009 or 2012 when you brought the camera up to the police officers?
It was between the 9th and 2009 and 2012, within those years of missing, because then after 3 years, it was just very frustrating.
And what did they tell you? What was the reason that they couldn't look at that camera footage? They told me
the camera was there for the drug dealers and for the community.
So that they couldn't look at that footage to see where he went because it was for something else.
Something else, yes, which was a slap in the face and very frustrating. Because I was all so adamant about the camera because weeks before something happened across the street, and you could see the front of my house when there was, the incident across the street. So that's how I know the camera covered my home, but they never researched it or looked at it.
So you obviously knew that he wasn't a runaway. What different things played into that you knew in your heart that he didn't run away and something must have happened?
First of all, not getting in contact with the family, his brothers. He had, him and little Jesse was real close. Not calling or reaching out to one of them was a big red flag. My mom is still here in the same house, same phone number, not reaching out to her. Like I say, even if he didn't want to speak to me or was having problems, it was other family members that he could have contacted and he didn't.
So when was Dominique's report changed? In 2012, how did that come about?
When Nicole was like, she was adamant to say that he wasn't, we were saying he didn't run away. And I went to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And Mr. Russo, I sat and explained to him, and then that's when they did the flyers that, they filed him as a missing person.
So just to repeat, it wasn't until 2000, Dominique went missing in 2009, and it wasn't until 2012 that he was considered a missing person.
Yes, a missing person.
Wow. So we are going to take a quick break, but coming up after the short break, we will talk about what has happened in Dominique's investigation since 2012. So do not go anywhere. We will be right back.
So I graduated from high school. Now what? What's SUNY Brockport? SUNY Brockport is a huge campus with the best dining services in all of the SUNY system. They have all the classes that you need to succeed. Today is the day to make your own future. Apply to SUNY Brockport today. My name is Joe Stam, and I go to SUNY Brockport.
Before the break, Moselle shared what happened the day her son disappeared. So now, Moselle, take us back to 2012 when Dominique's case was changed from a runaway to a missing person investigation. What was it like meeting investigator John Brennan for the first time? I know in our first interview, you told me that this was one of the first times you really felt that the RPD was treating your son's case differently. So if you wanted to speak a little bit about that.
Okay, so they set up to meet the meeting with, this is your new investigator, John Brennan. He asked me to come down to the police station. We went into a room, and on the desk, he had a file with Big Jesse, Dominique's father, a file. So I'm thinking, if we're here to talk about my missing son, why do you look like you have a background check on everybody? So, and he was like, oh, it's just the precaution because we have to look at the other parent or family member. So it was strange to me because prior to talking to him, I explained to them that my boy's father is very active in their lives and that we would do searches and stuff. So that kind of was odd to me. And then just the nonchalant attitude that he had in, working with him and having to call him and sometimes not returning the phone calls, or like when I moved to North Carolina, going down there to tell him that I was moving, and he had a backpack on, walking out the door saying he was going on his lunch. And I'm like, well, do you have 5 minutes so I can give you my information? He didn't write anything down, so I'm figuring he had a photogenic memory to remember it all. But, the experience with him was very, to me, unprofessional, very frustrating, and just lack of respect.
So I want to talk about that time when you went to meet with him before you moved to North Carolina. When was this? What year was this that you moved?
2015.
2015. So you went to the Rochester Police Department
Me
to
and
give
Barb
him
Sullivan.
to give him your updated contact information, and he told you he was going on his lunch break?
Yeah, we're walking out with his backpack. After me and her sat down there, he finally came out the door, but he was going on his lunch break. So I'm like, well, you got a few minutes? I'm moving, and I want to give you the information. So he sat down, crossed his legs, and was like, okay, well, I was like, this is where I'm moving. This is my phone number. And he was like, okay, well, I got it. I'll write it down. And he walked out the door, and I looked at Barb, and Barb looked at me, and I can't tell you what she said, but, it was just like, wow.
Yeah. So what has your relationship been like with the RPD since? Have you how has that communication been between you and investigator John Brennan? I know you said sometimes he
Horrible.
wouldn't return your calls.
Right.
Would he ever call you, or would you always have to call
I
him?
will always have to call them. I will always have to call them. I want to say her name, Mary, but the contact person that's in the missing person unit at the Rochester Police Department, it was an incident where some emails came in, some back and forth text messages. I sent them all to her, and she was like, well, I'm gonna email them to Brennan, and then he would tell me, oh, that's just hearsay. Mm-hmm. I did an interview, another show, I Need to Know. She was trying to track him down to do the show. We wanted to do the show at a certain time, but because he would never get back with her or return calls, we had to wait. But she was adamant on Dominique's birthday, we're gonna do the show. Mm-hmm. And it felt weird to me because he was like, he'll do the show, but he didn't want to sit on the panel, which was like, why if you're my lead investigator? So we went and did the show, and I heard his statement for the very first time, and it would never leave my head. Mm-hmm. He goes, well, I'm gonna say this, and I don't wanna sound funny or something, but there's no evidence showing this young man is alive.
And that was the first time you ever heard him say that?
Yes.
Wow.
And we looked at the show at an event that we had, the family came together, and then everybody was like, well, why would you say that? Because there's no evidence showing he's dead, but that just showed to me, like, if there's no, you thinking in your mind, there's no evidence he's alive, so that's just it. So I'm not gonna push or I'm not gonna do anything else. That's the way I took it. Yeah. And then calling them upon the years and trying to, even when I would come to Rochester, I could never sit down actually with nobody and talk or do anything. And I just did a 10-year anniversary where we put a billboard up. Nobody from the police department came.
So after you moved to North Carolina, then what was your relationship like with investigator John Brennan? Would he still be in contact with you?
No.
Have you talked to him now?
No.
Do you know anything about what he's doing on your son's case now, if he's still there?
Our relationship was so horrible to the point I didn't even know he retired. Mm-hmm. Nobody informed me that, okay, Ms. Grisham, John Brennan has retired. This is your new, as far as I know now, I don't even have an investigator on Dominique's case.
Yeah, because I know when the first time when we spoke, I was looking into the investigation, saw that investigator John Brennan was the lead investigator, and I noticed that he retired. Mm-hmm. And when I brought that information to you, you had no idea.
No idea at all.
What was that moment like for you finding that out from me, of all people? And
right, yes. Very, very, I can't say the word I want to say, but I was very, very, very frustrated, very upset. You know, I couldn't even get a courtesy call. You know, I've known other family members who have missing loved ones where the police will contact them and say, oh, this is the anniversary, we're gonna do this. Nobody will call on his birthday, nobody will call on his anniversary. I will call and say, can you just like run a clip of his story? Nothing. And back then when I was living here, I used to say, as many people that go missing, I don't know if they still do it now, but Rochester used to do a pet of the day. Mm-hmm. I brought up to their attention why y'all can't do a missing person flyer of the day. Mm-hmm. You know, that, you know, is very adamant. And then, you know, we had a case where my cousin dog went missing and she mentioned Dominique's, and they were more concerned about her finding her dog than actually finding the missing person. So it's just, I think they need to refocus every missing person case should be treated the same. I would just say that.
Of course. What, in your heart, what do you personally think happened to your son that day back in February of 2009?
In my heart, I feel he went to help a friend and just was at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Have you heard any theories or anything?
Yeah, I hear a lot. You know, he was this. I've heard a lot of theories, and I've had weird phone calls and I've had weird conversations, but I just pray to God every day that give me the strength, whatever comes my way, whether he's deceased or alive.
And when you did you bring these theories to the RPD, and what did they tell you about that?
Some of them, like if, you know, I would say, well, this person said that it was hearsay. You know, it was a time where we thought it was a possible sighting in Fairport, and the police
to tell that story.
Yeah, I wrote a status, and the guy was like, I think this is the young man that be outside the store. So I called the store, and she was like, well, I can't release anything. You know, the police have to do it. We calling the police. Nobody's called us back. So my oldest son, Jesse, drove to Fairport. And it wasn't Dominique. And the lady was like, as a mother, the manager contacted me back. And she's like, as a mother, I'm going to send you the footage and I'm going to release it so your son could see. Thank God it wasn't Dominique, but what if it was?
Yeah, so the police officers in Fairport said that they couldn't get that footage until
RPD contacted them. And I expressed to them that, we may have a sighting for Dominique. The young man is caught on camera. We have pictures, but they need somebody from Rochester Police Department to call them in order to do it, and nobody has called them.
So when you called RPD to tell them this information to call them, what did they say to you? Someone
would be on it.
And no one was.
No one even called me back.
To the point where your son actually went out there himself. My son
went out there, yep. And thankfully, the manager was like, I'm going to put management aside, and I'm coming to you as a mother. And she emailed me the picture, and she allowed my son to go back and look at the video.
Wow. So what would you say to Dom right now, if you could?
That I love him. How much I get emotional. I miss him. He has nieces and nephews he didn't meet. He got no cousins. I just deserve answers.
Yeah, and thank you so much for, being here. I know this isn't easy. Sharing his story isn't easy, especially after fighting for the past 13 years to try and get someone to listen to you. What advice would you have for other families who might find themselves in a similar situation as you?
Just, because like I said, 13 years ago, I didn't know when we woke up that morning that I was going to be the last time I see my son. As I said before, it's not about being in their business or being on their back, because my other son's like, Mom, I'm okay. But it's just no more friends and families. I didn't know a lot of his friends. I didn't know, who he hung out with, because I had boys. They would come and go, hang out, different girlfriends, do this, this. So, but seeing and looking at it now, I wish I knew more, but going forward, just, do what you can if you have a missing loved one. Don't depend on the police department. Don't depend on anything. Fight to keep your loved one voice out there.
What advice would you give these families to help them get their loved one's story out in the media? Because I know that was something that you had a hard time with.
Contact social media, keep, birthdays, anniversaries, or, just the day you wake up and your child on your mind. Post pictures, because social media have a big outcome in the world. So post pictures, post flyers, just keep pushing. Keep your loved one out there. Updated pictures, like the last age progression that I got of Dominic, he was 23. He's 29 now. And from what I'm understanding, he's supposed to get an age progression every 3 or 5 years. I've contacted them about that. Never received the age progression picture.
Wow. So we were talking about how social media, makes a big impact, how even the media itself makes a big impact when it comes to these cases. I mean, the recent disappearance of Gabby Petito this past year made, national headlines. And Brittany Drexel, the other local missing teen from Rochester who disappeared 2 months after Dominique, her case also made national news. I know I'm from Buffalo, and I heard of that case when I was just 8 years old there. And even to this day, there are podcasts on it. And so when you see these cases that make national news and get so much attention, and then to see your son's case, he was missing for 13 years, and no one is listening to you to get that him out in the media. What has that been like for you, especially this past year with, the disappearance of Gabby Petito and that going all over the news?
What really, I won't say shocking, but, when they just did an episode on Brittany's 13-year anniversary, and I'm like, well, why they couldn't do one on Dominique? They went missing at the same time. And then the slap in the face when, Dawn was in Carolina, and the media guy, the news, Channel 8 came down there to run a story, and they was like, well, if you come, we'll interview you. If you come, are you coming to Brittany's service or, her event? So I'm thinking in my mind, that's a slap in the face, because I know Dawn probably wouldn't have minded the interview, but why do I have to be at her function when I had the same function for my son and nobody showed up?
why do you think there is such a difference with how the media and police responded to the disappearance of Brittany compared to your son?
As I told Lynette this morning, I feel for Dawn because as a mother with a missing loved one, but I just feel it shouldn't matter if it's a girl, a boy, 16, 29, 8, black, white, blue. All media missing person people should get the same coverage. And I don't feel because if someone has a medical problem or this, if they're missing, they're missing. It shouldn't matter what the circumstances or what the ability or why they're missing. If they're missing, they're missing.
And do you think that them labeling Dominique as a runaway first when he first went missing and having him as an endangered runaway for 3 years before it was changed, do you think that played a role into the fact that he's still missing to this day?
Yes, because I was just upset that I didn't even understand the conclusion of why they would even label him as a runaway. I never gave no indication that he ran away because there was none. He walked out the door on the phone, and that was the last time we saw him. So
And he had nothing with him, right?
Right, and he didn't take anything. And they sneakers and clothes fanatics, but he didn't take anything. Just what he had on his back and his cell phone.
So what do you personally hope comes from us filming this today?
Answers. You know, whether Dominique is alive or deceased, somebody knows something. Somebody knows something, and that's all I want. I mean, they can call it in anonymously. They could write an email. They could send it with a letter. I just want to know what happened to my child on February 12, 2009.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Moselle. That is all the time we have for the first part of this interview. Thank you again so much for joining me today. But do not go anywhere because in the final part of this two-part series, we will be joined by journalist Rodney Brown, who was the first to report on Dominique's case. You will get to hear his experience reporting on this story and what the Rochester Police Department had to say to him. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Dominique Holly Grisham, please contact the RPD's Missing Persons Unit at 585-428-6595. Stay tuned. We will see you in the next episode. But I also want to give a special thanks to our crew today who made this all possible. Antonina Tortorello as the director, technical director Tyrese Johnson, audio Ethan Stiles, Chiron, Jack Kami Vong. I'm so sorry, Jack. I know I probably said that wrong. Floor manager Ashley Barclay, camera Mary Gorman, and on the prompter Ken Sauer. And then also I want to thank my professor Carvin Eisen and our technical director Mike Smith, or technical engineer, I'm sorry, Mike Smith. I could not have done any of this without you guys, so thank you all so much, and we will see you in the next episode.
Thank you.